This morning, Steve did that song for our sound check, and I said to him, and some of you may have heard it on the beginning live stream. I said, "Oh, can you do that right before my talk instead of the song? Instead of how you normally do the song after the talk." And he said, "Well, I wasn't going to do that song at all." And so I texted him after, and I said, "Could you just do a chorus of it? Could you just do a little lick of it?" That song is an incredible embodiment. For me at least, it brings up the feeling nature around the intensity of life, because that song is about someone who lost their life from suffering, lost their life because suffering became too much, and they lifted into their freedom form. And it is so relevant for right now to pay attention, to have heightened attention around the human experience and the human experience of suffering. So often we express from this place of not knowing what others are going through, right? When you're driving on the road, you could be driving past someone that flips out at you, and you may never know that they just lost someone, or they have some major struggle going on in their life, or they were on their last string and all they needed just was a hug or a smile. You don't know how your act of kindness and grace is a gift to someone. You don't know if your eyes, just looking into your eyes, or the hug that you offered, or the love that you offered, walked someone down off a cliff. But are we not living in times of intensity, times where a lot of suffering is up, where a lot of pain bodies are up, where a lot of healing work is right here, visible, active, visible? Last week, I shared the quote from Sig Paulson: "Each individual is the offspring of God, or the self-expression of the universal creative energy." Each individual is the offspring of God, the self-expression of the universal creative energy. So many of us, I'm sure today, are struggling with how to show up or how others show up, right? Either how to show up or how others show up, and most likely both of those are invitations to expand our practice. In a time of exacerbated pain, suffering, stress, poor emotional regulation, exceptional lack of decency, common courtesy, lack of kindness, especially in this time, it is an opportunity to dig deep into our spiritual roots, into our grounding, into our power to actually demonstrate what Sig Paulson said, that each individual is the offspring of God, or the self-expression of the universal creative energy. So what does that really mean? If we're the self-expression of universal creativity, that means that we are here to express God in action, right? We're here to demonstrate God. And in fact, when people look around at the world, humanity is what gives them hope that God is alive. When people see God expressed as humanity, they feel strength, they feel filled up, they feel reminded that God is love. They feel reminded that God is light. They feel reminded that God is intelligence, that God is compassion, that God is grace, that God is all these things of wonder. What reminds you now that God is alive and well and active in your world? Is it the people you see on Facebook? The expressions you see on Facebook, social media? Is it the articles you read in the news? Or is it your dog, a stream, a mountain, the sunshine, Mother Earth, the laugh of a child, grace, the heart and the hands of someone that is offering love, wisdom, kindness, and grace? It is our divine calling to express ourselves to the greatest degree possible as the offspring of God. And when we do, we uplift humanity. We step into our divine nature, and we begin to flow and operate from universal source in a way that is otherwise unseen. And when that happens, people see it and they know God. Now, kindness and decency, I think lately have been a little more of a rare rhino sighting than the common golden retriever that you see on your neighborhood block and all around. It seems that there is an unleashing going on of what's usually held in mind or held privately to offer kindness and space for others to coexist. But now it seems that name calling is becoming more of a norm. Have you noticed this? Like flashback to how many years ago, how often you saw an adult engage in the behavior of nasty name calling. I'm pretty sure it was fairly rare, at least in my circle of my world. It was fairly rare to see name calling. It was fairly rare to see bullying. Take a deep breath with me, a deep inhale. It's possible that we are going to be ramping up. We are headed into an election season. We are headed into a time of more processing. We are in the midst of a collective moment where people are pressing forth attacks, opinions, name calling. You fill in the blank. What is the thing that drives you nuts? Nuts. Those things are being unleashed in a time where other people are having experiences that are very deep and very intense and very heart-centered. And what they need is what we heard in that song that Steve Eppley shared this morning, that song written by Richard McDeesey. It's actually my favorite song that he's ever written. And he uses the words of Martin Luther King: darkness cannot drive out darkness, only love can do that. Hatred cannot press away hatred, only love, only light. So how do we engage in our spiritual practice and engage in our world? Because many of us, many of you might rather hop on a flying unicorn and get in your little unicorn tent for a month and not come out. But as spiritual beings, we don't always have that option, do we? Or we don't want to take that option. Because as beings of creative energy, of universal creative energy and universal creative flow, we know that, yes, like the legend of the unicorn that has a horn that has the power to mend and heal, so too do we have that power. We contain that power. And if we have a spiritual practice, we maintain that power. And if we step into our God-given co-creative abilities, we express that power. Now, I want to share with you a recent story. I was taking a morning for myself, really intent on this morning. I set my little G up with a book on the deck, and I took out my Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, and I brought it out with my little bio coffee, and I decided I was going to give myself this really beautiful, intent time for spiritual practice. And this is one of the books that I go to when I just want to engage in a reading, meditation, healing practice. And so I put my fingers on the page and I opened the book. And if you know Eckhart Tolle's work, it was about the pain body, very relevant to most human experiences. And so it was about the pain body, and I was just marveling at his story and his consciousness. But he was talking about the pain body, and he was telling a story about how to activate presence, to invoke presence in a way that helps move people from conflict into miracle. And so he was sharing this story about a neighbor that he had, and the neighbor would tend to get into her pain body. And it was late at night, very late at night, he heard a knock at the door, and he let the neighbor in, and the neighbor just started spewing what was going on with her, saying, I need your support. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. Very grounded in the story. And Eckhart Tolle explains his process of centering, noticing triggers, just expanding his ability to presence. And so he shares that he let her go on, and he just held the space. He held the space of consciousness, of presence. He didn't engage in the story. He didn't argue with the story. He didn't help solve. He didn't help navigate. He just listened. She talked for 10 minutes or so. I sat and I looked and I listened. Suddenly she stopped talking, looked at the papers all around her. She had spread out a bunch of papers for her validation of her trauma. She looked at all of the papers all around her as if she had just woken up from a dream. She became calm and gentle. Her entire energy field changed. Then she looked at me and said, "This isn't important at all, is it?" "No, it isn't," I said. She sat quietly for a couple more minutes, then picked up her papers and left. The next morning, she stopped me in the street, looking at me somewhat suspiciously. "What did you do to me?" "Last night was the first night in years that I slept well. In fact, I slept like a baby." She believed I had done something to her, but I had done nothing. Instead of asking what I had done to her, perhaps she should have asked what I had not done. I had not reacted, not confirmed the reality of her story, nor fed her mind with more thought and her pain body with more emotion. I had allowed her to experience whatever she was experiencing at that moment, and the power of allowing lies in non-interference. The power of allowing lies in non-interference, non-doing. Being present is always infinitely more powerful than anything one could say or do, although sometimes being present can give rise to words and actions. He goes on to say, "It is the arising of inner spaciousness where before there was the clutter of thought and the turmoil of emotion. The thinking mind cannot understand presence, so will often misinterpret it. It will say that you are uncaring, distant, have no compassion, are not relating. The truth is you are relating, but at a deeper level than thought and emotion. The truth is you are relating, but at a deeper level than thought and emotion. In fact, at that level, there is a true coming together, a true joining that goes far beyond relating. It is the stillness of presence. You can sense the formless essence in yourself and in the other as one. Knowing the oneness of yourself and other is true love, true care, true compassion." So I spent quite a bit of time just digesting this, breathing this in, looking at the beauty of this miracle practice that is Christ-centered. It is anointed, it is awakened, it is power-filled. Like, who doesn't want to have that as your magical unicorn healing wand, right? That you just go anytime, you just go, ding. So, as life has it, the page before said something like this: "A person with a strong active pain body has a particular energy emanation that other people perceive as extremely unpleasant. When they meet such a person, some people will immediately want to remove themselves and reduce the interaction with him or her to a minimum. They feel repulsed by the person's energy field. Others will feel a wave of aggression towards this person, and they will be rude or attack him, or verbally, and in some cases, even physically. This means that there is something within them that resonates with the other person's pain body. What they react to so strongly is also in them. It's their own pain body." He goes on to say, "Not surprisingly, people with heavy pain bodies frequently find themselves in conflict situations. Sometimes, of course, they take action to actively provoke that, but at other times they might not actually do anything. the negative they emanate is enough to attract hostility and generate conflict. It requires a high degree of presence to avoid reacting when confronted by someone with such an active pain body. If you are able to stay present, it sometimes happens that your presence enables the other person to disidentify from his or her own pain body, thus experience the miracle of sudden awakening. So as I'm sitting with those writings and thinking about everything in my world, everything in our world today, and how we can use this principle in this practice, I got a call from my mother. And I answered the call. Well, I actually didn't get a call. I got a text that said, we need to talk. Let's talk tonight. We need to talk tonight. And I thought, that smells fishy. So I picked up the phone and I FaceTimed her back. And when I FaceTimed her back, not to go into the whole story, but she presented this story that to me was a story that I had seen and heard my whole life, full of the same limitations and interesting nature and all of these things. So as she was talking and as she was sharing this story, which the only difference I can come to between this practice in this book, my story and his story, is that this story involved me and involved my life and impacted my life, or was proposing to impact my life. And so as she's sharing the story, I'm trying to pull up all of my Eckhart Tolle. I'm putting on my Eckhart Tolle boots, saying, please be my foundation. I'm putting on my Eckhart Tolle hat, saying, please absorb my mind. And I am really breathing. I'm trying to slow down. Have you ever listened to an Audible book on fast forward? Sometimes I listen to the ones I have to preview. I know this is terrible. I see people shaking their heads in our Zoom room going, I listen to them sometimes. This shows something about my nature. I rush sometimes, but I listen to them on 1.5 speed, sometimes even 2 speed, like twice. 2.9. So it's like this. But when you have to get into, when you have to get through a 6-10 hour book and you need to preview something, sometimes that helps. So this was the opposite. Last night, I was listening to this book and I needed to write down a quote. And I realized I could slow it way down so I could get the quote more easily. So I did that and I wrote down the quote. Now, on the morning I was practicing, as my mother's talking, I tried to just slow everything way down. That's what I tried to do in my body. I attempted to become my audible book on tape in my own being and just slow down and keep presencing. And I thought to myself, as she's talking, this is a moment where you will either be a part of creating conflict or be a part of prospering peace. And so I was slow, I was listening. I literally had just been soaking in Tolle. And she gets done talking and I just didn't have any words yet because there was nothing helpful that was going to come out of my mouth. So I was sitting there in silence, just sitting, praying for words that might invoke a miracle. And she inquired about my silence. So, like, what's your response to what I said? What's your answer? And I said, well, I have a lot of thoughts. After a bit of silence, I said, I have a lot of thoughts. And all of a sudden, all the thoughts were just rushing to my mind. They're all rushing up. They were swimming through my head. They were creating mountains of stories. The iceberg was turned upside down. And she came back with an amazing, beautiful pain body justification that to my brain was like, you're telling me the story of my life and why my needs as a child were never met. And she presented it with such beauty and Pollyanna vigor that all of a sudden I was just like, stop, listen to me. It's not funny actually, but she was just talking, and she's a little hard of hearing. So she was just talking over and over and over me, right? And then I just lost it and exploded, which on her end went beep, beep, bye-bye. So even in the midst of knowing about our principles and our practice, even in the midst of knowing we're headed towards an iceberg and there is a lot there, even with the intention, the high and sacred intention of prospering peace rather than creating chaos, I was completely unable to navigate this circumstance and this conversation with any degree of sanity. It was a full pain body experience, and I see some hands going up. Thank you. Bless you. And I had to just let it go, let it be gone for now, and retreat into my processing and my healing. And thank goodness for the Love and Wellness group on Tuesdays that allows the minister time for love and wellness as well, because they were my sanctuary. But we are often triggered, are we not? And we often fall short of our hopes, our intentions, our expectations. Dennis Merritt Jones in the book, The Art of Uncertainty, says, we can't force ourselves to grow faster than we should, any more than we can force a rose to blossom. However, we can have faith that the same life force that opens the rosebud at the perfect time is also operating through us, and that it knows when to open us as well. It can be hard to have patience. He talks about, Dennis does, he talks about the idea of lacking patience is like having a missile pointed at themselves, at yourself, right? Do you ever feel like that when you fall short of your own hope or expectation? Do you ever feel like you're the hardest on yourself? That it's hard to give yourself the space, the grace, the care that you need? Have patience with yourself. Let's have patience with ourselves as we navigate our internal world and our global experience. We get up, we start again, but at least we're trying. At least we care about how we show up and how we impact others. That takes heart and that takes awareness. Why does it matter? The word, the spiritual word, the physical word, contains the power to invoke, the power to create, and it matters how we use it. It is creative. So what does it create? It creates a heaven or it creates a hell. It creates our reality. It creates experience. It creates experiences for others. Some that might be into cyberbullying, even if they don't call it cyberbullying, but name calling, attacking, searching and seeking for conflict. Breathe and remember intention. Remember, be humble enough, right, to remember that we don't know where everyone is. Do we want to be the person that invited someone into a full-fledged pain body experience? Do we want to be the person that tells someone, go ahead, walk off that ledge? Rumi said, stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. We are the world's experience of God. You are what God created and had for the world as hope, as love, as its hands, its arms, its heart. You are God brought to life. Therefore, we're a reflection of God. And as a reflection of God, we're a reminder of how good or how bad this universe is. And that's a great responsibility. That's a great responsibility. And we can take on that responsibility with conscious awareness by not only expanding our awareness, but expanding conscious communication. We have a UVC community member who recently put on social media an amazing post, a beautiful post. And I won't read the whole thing, it was quite long, but essentially it talked about how they normally post these kind of things, uplifting things, things to really draw people together. And they understand that we're heading into a time of importance in these next few months, and that they'll be sharing some things that they feel are, you know, important, educational, taking a stand. They'll be taking a stand for some things. And in this post, it invited the people that are on her community, in her Facebook community, to take care of themselves, but to adhere to decency, boundaries, and guidelines. So she made an invitation for, if people can't hear her thoughts, not her attacks, not her nastiness or words of unkindness, but her empowered thoughts of how to create a world that works for all and what's important right now. She just invited them to lift off, to either say something constructive or to post their things on their own pages, but that she won't be going to their pages if that's not her calling, and don't come to hers unless you can behave like adults. And she put it out there. So she detailed an invitation. She declared her purpose, she made a request, and she set boundaries. And it was a beautiful, conscious post. What kind of things can we do? Can we set into motion to up the level of the conversation, to, while things are ramping up, to actually ramp up our consciousness? My dad always used to tell me when we were teenagers growing up, and we would, you know, drop some interesting language in the house. He didn't say many things, and he didn't do a lot of like parenting that was like, hey, listen, we need to talk. That was very, very rare. So when he did say something, you heard it. But I remember him really talking to us about using profane language and saying that we have more descriptive, intelligent language that we can use. And it's wise to use words that actually communicate more, rather than blanket words that are so very universal and have very little meaning or very short meaning. So he always encouraged us to get out of name calling, get out of using other words, and find intelligent words that actually describe, educate, and express the depth or the character of what we're feeling. What a gift. So can we ask ourselves, who do I want to be? And does it matter? It matters, doesn't it? We can create our internal world that we live in. We can work with our feelings and emotions, but out here, we co-create this. And it is incumbent upon each one of us to look at what we're offering to the whole, to look at what we're creating. What do we want our children to model? We're in the midst of a lot of pain. The name calling grosses me out. It's a trigger for me. Would you want someone to talk to your child like that? Words are creative, and they return to us like a boomerang. We can't put them out there without living within them. We create a heaven or a hell, and there's nothing that God can do to relieve us of our creation. We live within it. We either model a world that we want to live in, or we are molded by the world we are modeling. Sig Paulson, as you know, is one of my favorite Unity teachers. And he says this: heaven is the paradise that will be brought into expression when man exercises his power to be what he is created to be. He goes on to say, scientific research indicates that the whole outer universe is energy in one form or another. And this energy is completely responsive to the direction that can maintain or intensify the present state of hell on earth, or bring forth a paradise for all if properly and lovingly redirected. Atomic energy, for example, can be used to wipe out a civilization or to make a desert blossom like the rose. It should be pretty obvious that there is no outer God who is about to yell, "Whoa, boys, you've gone far enough." We wish. Whoa, boys, you've gone far enough. I'm coming down to earth to take over and establish peace among men and nations. He says, the God who is to save mankind, if it is to be saved, is the divine potential within humanity itself, the celestial spark within each individual, or as St. Paul describes it, Christ in you, your hope of glory, or as Jesus describes it, the Spirit of truth that is to lead man into all truth. There isn't much doubt any longer that this universe is designed as a dwelling place for a race of gods. This universe is designed as a dwelling place for a race of gods. The energies that are being brought to light in the physical, mental, and emotional departments of being are just too great and powerful to be handled adequately by the ignorant, frightened, belligerent, warlike creature that man has been. So what is ours to do? I have the blessing of being able to support families by offering memorials. I've done a lot of memorials, and I can say many of them are deep and full of appreciation and feeling. And I can also say that many are polite, with loving, caring energy, but with the undercurrent of a conversation that is usually not shared in a memorial service. The undercurrent of a conversation, something that is underneath the eulogy, underneath all of the blessings and the lift off messages. Underneath all of that, there is often a very strong conversation going on. And it has to do with the difficult stuff. It has to do with what we don't want to say at someone's memorial, which was that, as Temple Hayes says, what's going to make it into my 45-minute speech is that there are things that if someone were not trying to be polite or graceful would make it into the person's 45-minute speech, even if that 45-minute speech is silent. What will people remember? What will last? What's worth our energy? My minister friend Temple Hayes from her center in Florida shared that practice of just saying, is it gonna make it into my 45-minute speech? And she shared that practice because that practice helps us decide and know, am I aligned with this? Is this part of who I want to be remembered as? And also, is this worth my energy? Is this worth my getting bent out of shape about? Or is the higher energy that I tried? I showed up. I made myself vulnerable. I didn't just go hide in my little unicorn tent and saw off my horn. That's an awful, awful little visual. Maybe that'll stick with us. Anytime we feel like just retreating, don't take off the unicorn's horn. Leave it on there. You are a unicorn. We are here. We have the power to mend and heal. Martha Creek, one of our New Thought leaders, she always says that she thinks about that. She tries to support people in spiritual coaching to have themselves, ask that question, what's going to be on my epitaph? She says, is it going to be Martha Creek, woman of many resentments? Is it going to be fill in the blank, dropper of F-bombs? Is it going to be this name, proficient at cyberbullying and making people delete them? What is it going to be? What will people remember? What is worth it? Is it going to be woman who lost her mind in the pandemic, or man with sexist, unaware narcissism? There is more than enough grace in this world for our shortcomings. There is more than enough grace for the times that we can't reach our intentions and demonstrate them gracefully. But I think at the end of this life, when all is said and done, we will be able to breathe deeply when we recognize that we had high intentions, that we attempted to express the nature of the Creator for all of humanity. Some people are asking themselves right now, when will this be over? When will this be over? My last conversation with Reverend Temple Hayes, she said the better question to ask is, who will I be when we emerge? Who will I be when we emerge from this? Be someone who reminds people that God is alive and well in the heart of humanity. As Rumi said, your acts of kindness are iridescent wings of divine love, which linger and continue to uplift others long after your sharing. Namaste.